15 seconds. That's how much time you have to run for your life. Imagine having only 15 seconds to find a bomb shelter. Now imagine doing it with small children or elderly parents or an ailing friend.
Israeli ambassador to the United Nations commenting on the relentless rocket attacks on Israel coming from Hamas. Yesterday, the UN Security Council held an emergency closed meeting on the escalating violence along the Israeli-Gaza border. And today, new reports of rockets fired from Lebanon hitting the northern part of the country. Ben Shapiro is the editor-in-chief at truthrevolt.org and joins us from Los Angeles. Ben, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I want to get your reaction first to the new reports, the newest revelations of these rockets from Lebanon being launched into Israel.
Not a shock. Every time there's an attack from one side, there's usually an attack from the other. When Israel was being hit by Lebanon a few years back, there were attempts to create violence in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip as well. There's a coordinated assault. All these folks hate each other, but they hate Israel more, and that's really the important point here. Anytime Israel does not act with quickness and brutal force in dealing with folks like Hamas, folks like Hezbollah up in the north, are going to take advantage of the situation.
Now, you made some comments yesterday saying that this, referring to your own administration, is the first administration in American history that is obviously anti-Israel. You said that they are borderline a Jew-hating administration. What is it about the Obama administration's actions that have led you to make those comments?
Well, number one, this is the first administration in American history that has ever signed money over to a terrorist group, a known terrorist group that is firing rockets on Jewish civilian centers. The Hamas Palestinian Authority Islamic Jihad unity government was formed on June 2nd. The Obama administration has repeatedly denied the ability to cut funding to the Palestinian Authority unity government. Beyond that, the Obama administration has a long history of undercutting Israel's ability to defend itself. Everything from the Obama administration leaking Israeli national security secrets with regard to Iran to the Obama administration stating that the Israelis had no rationale not to negotiate with the Palestinian Authority, even if the Palestinian Authority refused to recognize Israel as a Jewish state. So this has been a long time in coming. This is this really is the manifestation of a daylight, an enormous amount of daylight shown between the United States and Israel, and Israel's enemies are taking advantage of that daylight.
They're saying that on average it's about $500 million that are going to the Palestinian Authority, and you're right, it recently formed a unity government with Hamas, but Canada's not exempt from that. They too give money to Palestine. So are we funding terrorists, and should we stop?
If Canada is giving money to the Palestinian Authority, of course they should stop. And anybody who's voting in favor of such funding should stop, because the fact is that this unity government is now firing rockets into civilian centers in Israel. This unity government, which stands together, by the way, this idea that the unity government is not a unity government at all is absolute nonsense. Mahmoud Abbas has been saying for years that there really is no ideological conflict between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas, Islamic Jihad. The Fatah group, which is the military wing of the Palestinian Authority, put up on its Facebook page, one God, one goal, no Israel, essentially. So now, they're all working together.
Now, basically, Obama says he's in support of Israel, except, of course, he was one of the last leaders to actually call Netanyahu. We do have comments from that phone call. Basically, what he said is this. The president reiterated the United States' strong condemnation of continuing rocket fire into Israel by Hamas and other terrorist organizations in Gaza and reaffirmed Israel's right to defend itself against these attacks. The United States remains prepared to facilitate a cessation of hostilities, including a return to the November 2012 ceasefire agreement. Is it crazy that Obama would consider negotiating a ceasefire agreement with Hamas, a terrorist organization in Israel?
No, it's not that crazy considering he did it just a couple of years ago. Israel really didn't want that ceasefire agreement. Israel wanted to continue devastating Hamas. The Obama administration leveraged every ability that it had in order to make that happen. And then the next sentence of that dispatch with regard to the call between Netanyahu and President Obama explicitly states that the president called on the Israelis not to raise the risk of escalation, and they should attempt to create some sort of calm in the region. You can't call on both sides to create calm when one side is firing rockets into the middle of civilian centers. There's only one solution to Hamas, and that is to destroy it utterly and completely. But the West has no appetite for that, and the West has no appetite for helping Israel achieve that. The Obama administration is even beyond that. I mean, when Hamas kidnapped 3 Jewish boys and then killed them, the President of the United States said absolutely nothing. I'm talking about the President. He said nothing about it for 3 weeks until these kids were killed. And then once they were killed, the President called on Israel for restraint. So that shows you where he is.
I think in the West, people like to talk about Israel going back to the 1967 borders. Do you think if Hamas was given every inch of land back to the 1967 borders, they would stop the attacks and the cries for more land?
It wouldn't be giving land back. First of all, this was never Hamas's land. It was never Palestinian land. That land was historically Jewish. But regardless of that point, the fact is that Hamas actually was not occupied, right? I mean, the Gaza Strip was evacuated by the Jews, by the Israelis, in 2005. Jewish families were moved out of their homes in 2005, handing the Gaza Strip over to the Palestinians. The Palestinians then proceeded to burn down every Jewish house, every Jewish greenhouse, and then elect Hamas in that area. So the idea that it's quote-unquote occupation that's driving this. Like, Hamas's charter is very clear. Hamas doesn't just want to kill Jews inside Israel. It wants to kill Jews across borders, internationally. And the Palestinian Authority Charter, as well as the Hamas Charter, both state that their end goal is the full quote-unquote liberation of all of quote-unquote Palestine from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. They're shooting missiles into places like Tel Aviv. Unless you consider Tel Aviv a settlement, there's nothing to talk about here with regard to settlements or land swaps.
Yeah, it's not about grievance, it's about ideology. So what happens next? How do we resolve this? It looks like 40,000 troops amassed along the border. Are forces going on the ground?
They're going to have to go in on the ground. And Bibi Netanyahu knows they're going to have to go in on the ground. He's attempting to get some sort of ceasefire brokered at the moment, or at least was a week ago. Now he's saying we're going to need to go in and destroy these folks. The fact is, the only reason that troops are necessary on the ground at all is because Israel is so concerned about civilian casualties. That's why they send troops into urban areas, into the roughest kind of warfare, instead of bombing from the air, where they have complete air superiority. It just demonstrates, once again, the humanity of the Israelis and the non-humanity of their opponents, who put women and children around rocket launchers to prevent Israel from striking from above.
Ben, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much.